you all. Before we got to the DJ, I said, all right, Lieutenant Colonel, when am I speaking? So he got hired out there. So I will be remiss if I didn't get up here and acknowledge all of the folks who have stood by me through some of the most painful times of my life. And so I did want to address all of you. Again, I'm so incredibly grateful for you all. Nelson Mandela once said, real leaders must be ready to sacrifice all for the freedom of their people. I took this assertion to heart when I was elected the youngest chief prosecutor of any major American city in the country. Freedom, justice, and equality was how I defined the mission of my office as State's Attorney for Baltimore City. Which is why my victory against an incumbent, despite the naysayers that said I was too young, too inexperienced, I couldn't raise enough money, and that me running for this position would not only interrupt my then husband's career, but politically destroy it. Regardless of the naysayers, very much like I saw from the beginning, my competence, my qualifications, and like African Americans, and what we have now seen is really the myth of white supremacy. My competence, my qualifications, my intellectual capacity to run for the largest law firm in the city of Baltimore was challenged daily. Being in a position where 95% of the prosecutors in the country are white. 79% of the prosecutors in this country are white men. I represented all 8 years I was in office, less than 1% of all elected prosecutors. Now I need you guys to think about that. Prosecutors are one of the most important stakeholders in the criminal justice system. We decide who's going to be charged, what they're going to be charged with, what sentence recommendations we're going to make. We determine if someone's going to get into the criminal justice system in the first place. We understand that power, that discretion has effects on our community. So I stood, my office, we stood at the forefront of the progressive prosecutorial movement, right? Where our attempts to reform and equalize the criminal justice system were replicated not just nationally, but internationally. My office set the tone for police accountability in this country when we became one of the first prosecutors in the country to use our power and discretion to charge several police officers with the untimely death of a 26-year-old black man by the name of Freddie Carlos Rachel, who was unconstitutionally arrested, placed in a metal wagon headfirst, feet shackled and handcuffed, and when his spine was partially severed in the back of that wagon, his pleas for medical attention were ignored. I followed the facts with the law, and to this day, I would do nothing differently. To our dismay, the case was sabotaged by the Baltimore Police Department. And rather than succumb to the pains of defeat, my team licked our wounds, learned our lessons, and searched for solutions to what we realized was a systemic problem in policing. Once again, being one of the first prosecutors' offices in the country to expose the unspoken systematic problems within policing, I was publicly vilified and even called a moron by my fellow colleagues when I introduced a slate of police accountability reform proposals years later following the death of George Floyd, where most of those proposals were included in the Justice and Policing Act, and unfortunately that was never passed. Ensuring one standard of justice was the mission and the vision of my office. It wasn't just a motto, it was our mission, which is why we subsequently convicted, after our lessons learned in the Freddie Gray case, 33 police officers successfully who were violating the rights and abusing the rights of citizens in Baltimore City. When it was determined that laws were being discriminately enforced against poor black and brown communities, specifically in West Baltimore, my office ensured racial equity by refusing to prosecute marijuana possession, and low-level offenses that had absolutely nothing to do with public safety. Yet we all saw too often in this country lead to a death sentence for black people in this country. Despite the criticism, constant criticism, the negative media coverage for implementing these policies, our office in this city stood among 26 major municipalities achieving reductions in a crime rate, the jail population, and the recidivism rate for the first time in years. Unlike other major municipalities across the nation, we made significant progress, and our policies were inspired by similar measures in Scotland, Kenya, London. I was invited to Germany and Portugal, and Kenya. My office set the tone for criminal justice reform in this country, and we created the first conviction integrity unit in the entire state of Maryland. A unit that was dedicated to the reinvestigation of claims of actual innocence. Through that unit, we exonerated 13 innocent black men that cumulatively served 300 years in prison for crimes they had not committed. We vacated over 800 cases of people wrongly convicted by corrupt police officers that were planting guns and drugs on citizens in the city of Baltimore for decades.
Yeah.
Every day that I led the state's attorney's office, I used my power and my discretion to ensure justice over convictions. In fact, as I said, that was the only barometer of our success, was justice. And so when it came down to my willingness to confront any injustice perpetuated by formidable institutions, biased right-wing media like Sinclair Broadcasting, and politicians with nefarious political motives against the community I was privileged to represent, I wielded the sword of truth against depravity, no matter the circumstance. Hence, when the president, then Trump, and his federal agents went rogue and employed their vigilante tactics in Portland and Oregon against unarmed protesters, Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner and I warned him, if you tried those same tactics in our cities, we would use our power and discretion to prosecute them. 2 months later, Trump's Department of Justice and his cronies, including Larry Hogan, opened a criminal investigation into me. The United States of America then selectively decided to use its might to destroy every facet of my life by accusing me, the then serving state's attorney of Baltimore City, of perjury and mortgage fraud just a mere 5 months before my re-election. The irony of someone like me, who was a pioneer, deeply committed to the principles of the progressive prosecutorial movement, a movement centered on not only uncovering the truth, but guided by the truth and taking actions that were rooted in the truth. To then be called a liar and a thief was publicly devastating. I knew that serving as the top prosecutor in a city that significantly contributes black and brown bodies to the National Prison Industrial Complex would inevitably ruffle the feathers of the established order when I sought to equalize justice by reducing the prison population. I fully understood that by taking an unequivocal stance against police brutality and wielding that sort of truth, that it was going to come and it was going to piss off the elite. But what I did not know and could have never anticipated was that those righteous decisions would ultimately lead me to the same sobering reality faced by each and every one of the 13 innocent black men that I freed. You see, much like them, I found myself over and over again confronted with the disheartening truth. My innocence and my freedom meant absolutely nothing to the powers that be, which included the media that were hell-bent on sensationalizing me to be yet another corrupt Baltimore politician, or better yet, just another black Baltimore City criminal. For almost 5 years, the United States of America, represented by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Maryland U.S. Attorney's Office, and the Department of Justice, spent millions upon millions of dollars surveilling and scrutinizing every aspect of my life, all in an attempt to publicly discredit me. Employing tactics reminiscent of COINTELPRO, the FBI conducted highly visible public inquiries and examinations of my taxes, campaign finances, state ethics forms, charitable contributions. With no prior warning, federal authorities arrived unannounced at people's homes at 5 a.m. to interrogate my neighbors, my children's dance instructors, my hairdresser, my employees, colleagues, lawyers, friends, and family. This abusive and intimidating public spectacle even included the widespread issuance of exhaustive subpoenas to nearly every black church in the city of Baltimore, just before my re-election. It really was a sinister but crafty scheme to accuse me, the then serving state's attorney, of perjury and mortgage fraud just a mere 5 months before that re-election. It wasn't just a personal attack against my credibility and my character, clearly aimed at negatively affecting the outcome of my third-term re-election, which it did. This humiliating, calculating, sadistic, and tactical maneuver was the recreation of a playbook very much intended to break me. Break me professionally, break me politically, break me financially, spiritually, and most importantly, break me psychologically. So that the brutality of the punishment imposed upon me and the very public example of my demise would serve as a reminder to me and a warning to others that dared to walk in my footsteps and challenge the status quo the way that I did, not to do it. And while I fully understood the buck-breaking intentions of my adversaries, disbelief wrestled with my comprehension as I gazed upon this orchestrated scheme and the underlying motivations behind those unfounded and ridiculous accusations. I became the only person in America targeted, selectively prosecuted, and convicted under a legally ambiguous statute, meaning it was never defined, of withdrawing my own retirement savings to buy property. A simple step I was professionally advised I could take to secure a better future for my children. The United States of America attempted to destroy my life. I lost my home, my car, my career, my marriage, my finances, and my freedom. For withdrawing my money to buy property. For the first, and I just gotta say, for the past year, I've been on house arrest, serving a federal sentence as I await the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals decision that will determine whether I will remain a felon for the rest of my life, which could subsequently lead to me losing my law license, and by the way, my home, because the government wants it. You see, this year, Juneteenth, wasn't just a day that we celebrated our freedom as a people. Juneteenth had greater significance to me and to my children, because that was the day that my freedom was granted.
Amen.